Hello and thank you for tuning into News Today, where we break down the day's top stories with precision and clarity. Without delay, take a look at the headlines first. Fire outbreak in Delhi and Rajkot raises fire safety concerns. Russia ready to expand nuclear cooperation with India. Treaty on intellectual property, genetic resources and associated traditional knowledge adopted. A portion of the iconic Virupaksha temple in Hampi, Karnataka has collapsed following torrential rains. A new paper released by the World Inequality Lab sheds light on India's staggering levels of income and wealth inequality. India's pulses or dal imports reached their highest level in 6 years. In our very first news, the tragic fire incidents at a private hospital in Delhi and an indoor gaming center in Rajkot, Gujarat have once again put the spotlight on India's fire safety preparedness and compliance mechanisms. As per the latest NCRB report for 2022, a staggering 7,435 lives were lost in over 7,500 fire accidents across the country in 2022. Experts point to several systematic challenges that hinder effective fire prevention and response. One major hurdle is the absence of uniform nationwide legislation governing fire safety norms. Fire services fall under the state list, with fire safety operations managed by municipalities that often suffer from resource constraints. While the National Building Code of India 2016 provides for fire and life safety audits, but it remains a recommendatory provision. There is also a severe shortage of fire services infrastructure and personnel across India. A 2019 parliamentary response revealed that there were 5,191 fewer fire stations and 5,03,365 fewer personnel than required. Poor compliance with existing safety regulations is another area of concern. In the recent Delhi hospital fire, the facility's license was found to be inadequate and expired, with the building lacking basic firefighting equipment. Similarly, the gaming center in Rajkot did not have the mandatory no objection certificate, and welding work was underway during operational hours. Lastly, inspections are weak. Audits after major disaster reveal critical shortcomings, but follow-up actions are rare. The central government has initiated some measures like the Scheme for Expansion and Modernization of Fire Services until 2025-26 for strengthening fire services in the states. Another initiative is Model Bill to provide for the maintenance of fire and emergency service for the state, circulated by the centre. Lastly, NDMA has released guidelines on scaling, type of equipment and training of fire services in the country. In conclusion, the Delhi and Rajkot fire incidents have again exposed glaring gaps in India's fire safety mechanisms, necessitating concerted efforts from federal and state governments to overhaul outdated policies and boost compliance. In our next news, in a significant development, Russia extends an offer to expand nuclear cooperation with India. The potential areas for broadening this nuclear partnership were discussed during a recent visit by the chairman of India's Atomic Energy Commission to Russia's Proryv or Breakthrough Project site in the Tomsk region of Russia. The Proryv project aims to create a new technological platform with a closed nuclear fuel cycle to help resolve challenges around spent nuclear fuel and radioactive waste management. The nuclear fuel cycle consists of 3 main stages: the front end, which is for fuel preparation, the service period, when the fuel is used during reactor operation, and the back end for safe management of the spent nuclear fuel. In closed nuclear fuel cycles, spent fuel is reprocessed and recycled. According to sources, the prospective areas for expanded Russia-India nuclear ties include the serial construction of Russian-designed high-capacity nuclear power units at a new site in India. Cooperation in the nuclear fuel cycle area and non-power applications is also on the table. Notably, Russia has proposed collaborating with India on implementing floating nuclear power plants. Now let's shift our focus on what exactly is a floating nuclear power plant. It is a site with one or more nuclear reactors located on a platform at sea. These are maritime platforms with small modular reactors installed on ships or barges to provide clean electricity, heat, and desalinated water. As of now, Russia is the only country operating a floating nuclear plant called the Akademik Lomonosov. The benefits of these floating plants include producing low carbon power and heat, lower construction costs, and less vulnerability to earthquakes. On the existing front of India-Russia nuclear cooperation, Department of Atomic Energy and Russia's Rosatom signed the Strategic Vision for Strengthening Cooperation in Peaceful Uses of Atomic Energy 2014. This included a program of action for localizing manufacturing of components in India for the Russian-designed nuclear power plant. Another prominent example of the Indo-Russian nuclear ties is the Kudankulam nuclear power plant in Tamil Nadu, where Unit 1 and Unit 2 are already operational while 4 more units are under construction. As the details of this latest Russian offer emerge, all eyes are now on how India weighs the economic interest and energy needs against the safety considerations of pursuing such an ambitious expansion of nuclear cooperation. In our next news, in a historic move, member states of the World Intellectual Property Organization, or WIPO, have adopted a groundbreaking new treaty that addresses the intersection of intellectual property rights, genetic resources, and traditional knowledge, and includes provisions specifically for indigenous peoples as well as the local communities. The core element of this treaty is the establishment of a new disclosure requirement for patent applicants. Those seeking patents on inventions that utilize genetic resources or associated traditional knowledge will now have to disclose the country of origin or the source of those genetic resources. They must also name the indigenous people or local community that provided the associated traditional knowledge utilized in the invention. Any WIPO member state can choose to become a party to this new treaty. However, its provisions will not apply retroactively to patents filed before the treaty enters into force. Now, let's shift our focus in understanding the need for such a treaty. The primary aim is to combat the unethical practice of biopiracy, where traditional knowledge is exploited for commercial gain without any permission, compensation, or recognition for the indigenous communities involved. Genetic resources found in medicinal plants, agricultural crops, and elsewhere are often utilized in developing patented innovations, even though they cannot be directly patented themselves. Traditional knowledge systems have similarly aided scientific research and patent developments over the years. Furthermore, here are some acts for the protection of genetic resources and traditional knowledge in India. First, the Biological Diversity Act 2002. Second, the Patents Act 1970. Another we have the Geographical Indications of Goods Registration and Protection Act 1999. And lastly, the Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act 2001. Apart from these, the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library is also a measure at play. Wrapping up, take a look at the background of the World Intellectual Property Organization. The World Intellectual Property Organization itself has a long history, having been established through an international convention back in 1967. The convention transformed earlier BIPRI, that is United International Bureau for the Protection of Intellectual Property, into WIPO. It is a specialized UN agency acting as a global forum for intellectual property services, policy, information, and cooperation. With its headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland, it currently has 193 member states, including India. Some WIPO-administered treaties include Berne Convention, Washington Treaty, Paris Convention, Singapore Treaty on the Law of Trademarks, etc. As discussions continue on the finer operational details, this newly adopted treaty is being hailed as a path-breaking step towards making the patent system more equitable, ethical, and cognizant of indigenous rights.
Moving ahead in the news, in a devastating incident, a portion of the iconic Virupaksha temple in Hampi, Karnataka has collapsed following torrential rains. The temple's pavilion, known as the Salu Mantap, succumbed to the relentless downpour, leaving a significant part of this historic structure in ruins. The Virupaksha temple holds immense cultural and architectural significance, dedicated to Lord Virupaksha, a form of Shiva and the consort of the local goddess Pampa. Situated in the ancient city of Hampi, which served as the capital of the mighty Vijayanagar Empire between the 14th and 16th centuries, the temple is part of the group of monuments at Hampi, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. A prime example of the Dravid style of temple architecture, the Virupaksha temple is renowned for its grand gopuras, towering vimana, intricate carvings, and pillared halls. Its origins can be traced back to the 9th and 10th centuries, with inscriptions suggesting the existence of an earlier shrine. Over the centuries, various dynasties, including the Pallavas, Chalukyas, Hoysalas, and Cholas, have contributed to the temple's grandeur. However, it was under the Vijayanagar Empire that the shrine truly flourished. The Sangama kings transformed it into a major religious monument, while the Tuluvas expanded it further. Notably, the legendary king Krishnadeva Rai, who ruled from 1509 to 1529 CE, constructed a hall in front of the main shrine to mark his accession and also added the eastern Gopuram. The Dravid style of temple architecture, exemplified by the Virupaksha temple, is characterized by distinct features. The Garbhagriha, or the innermost sanctum, typically has the smallest tower, as it is often the oldest part of the temple. The temple compound is enclosed by a wall with an entrance gateway known as the Gopuram. The main temple tower, or the Vimana, resembles as a stepped pyramid, rising geometrically rather than the curved Shikara or Nagara style. Dwarpalas, or doorkeepers, stand guard as sculptures, while a large water reservoir or temple tank is commonly found within the compound. The Virupaksha temple's significance as a living testament to India's rich cultural heritage cannot be overstated, and its preservation remains a matter of utmost importance. As the nation grapples with the aftermath of this tragic incident, attention will now turn to the meticulous restoration process, ensuring that the temple's grandeur is preserved for generations to come. Moving ahead in the news, a new paper released by the World Inequality Lab sheds light on India's staggering levels of income and wealth inequality. The study, titled Towards Tax Justice and Wealth Redistribution in India, serves as a follow-up to the lab's previous study, Income and Wealth Inequality in India, 1922 to 2023, The Rise of the Billionaire Raj, published in March 2024. The paper proposes a tax package targeting the ultra-wealthy that could generate revenue between 2.5% and 5% of GDP. This revenue would then be channeled into critical social sectors like health and education, facilitating wealth redistribution. The findings are quite alarming. While inequality declined post-independence, it began rising in the 1980s and has skyrocketed since the 2000s. If we talk about income inequality, currently the top 1% of the earners in India account for a staggering 22.6% of the total pre-tax national income, up from the 7.3% in 1980. In contrast, the bottom 50% earn a mere 15% of the total income. The wealth divide is even more pronounced. The top 1% now control over 40% of the country's total wealth, up from 12.5% in 1980, while the bottom 50% hold only 6.4% of the total wealth. The impacts of such extreme economic inequality are far-reaching, perpetuating poverty, deprivation, social unrest and conflict, reduced social mobility, political instability, and even hampering economic growth. Under a moderate scenario, the proposed tax package includes a 2% annual wealth tax on net wealth exceeding 10 crore rupees and 4% for net wealth over 100 crores. Additionally, it calls for a 33% inheritance tax on estates valued at over 10 crores and 45% on those exceeding 100 crores. While the proposed measures are likely to face opposition from some quarters, the report argues that addressing India's inequality crisis is crucial for the nation's long-term social and economic well-being. Moving on to the next news. In a significant development, India's pulses or dal imports surged a staggering 84% year-on-year in the fiscal year 2023-24, reaching their highest level in 6 years. The country imported a massive 4.65 million metric tons of pulses during this period, marking the highest import quantity since fiscal year 2018. In value terms, these imports skyrocketed by a whopping 93% to $3.75 billion. This surge in imports was prompted by lower domestic production, which led the Indian government to allow duty-free imports of red lentils and yellow peas to meet the nation's insatiable appetite for dals. It's important to note that India holds the distinction of being the largest producer, consumer, and importer of pulses globally. Major pulse-producing states include Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, and Karnataka, with chickpeas or gram contributing around 40% of the total pulse production, followed by pigeon pea or tur arhar at 15 to 20%. While India imports pulses from various countries like Australia, Canada, Russia, Turkey, Tanzania, Sudan, Mozambique, Malawi, and Myanmar, it also exports to nations such as Bangladesh, China, UAE, the US, and Nepal. The significance of pulses in the Indian diet cannot be overstated. Not only are they rich in protein, with 20 to 25% of their weight composed of protein, but they are also an excellent source of soluble fiber. Moreover, over 80% of total pulses are grown in rain-fed regions, making them less water-intensive compared to other crops. Pulses also play a crucial role in sustainable agriculture. Their nitrogen-fixing properties improve soil fertility, while their cultivation reduces the dependence on synthetic fertilizers, mitigating the effects of climate change. To promote pulse cultivation, the Indian government has implemented several key initiatives, such as the National Food Security Mission, which aims to increase production through area expansion and productivity enhancement. Additionally, the Pradhan Mantri Annadata Aay Sanrakshan Abhiyan ensures the procurement of oil seeds and pulses from registered farmers at minimum support prices, while the Crop Diversification Program encourages the diversion of water-intensive paddy crop areas to alternative crops, including pulses. As India continues to grapple with the challenge of meeting its ever-growing demand for pulses, these initiatives, coupled with efforts to boost domestic production, will play a crucial role in assuring food security and promoting sustainable agricultural practices. The place in news for today is Papua New Guinea, with its capital Port Moresby. It is in the news as recently the country was hit by a massive landslide. Papua New Guinea is an island country in the southwestern Pacific Ocean along a Pacific Ring of Fire. It encompasses eastern half of New Guinea, which is also the world's second largest island, Bismarck Archipelago, Bougainville and Buka, and many small offshore islands. It also stretches from just south of the equator to Torres Strait. If we talk about its geographical features, it is situated along a Pacific Ring of Fire. Its major rivers are Sepik, Fly and Strickland, and its highest peak is Mount Wilhelm.
As we conclude today's main news, let's take a look at some quick updates. Silence period was observed in the states where Lok Sabha elections were held. The silence period is a ban on political campaigning before voting. It begins 48 hours before the voting day and ends after polling ends. CBDT notifies Cost Inflation Index for financial year 2024-25 for calculating long-term capital gains. LTCG is the profit arising from the sale of a capital asset, that is stocks, bonds, jewelry, buildings, etc., held for a duration of 12 to 36 months. Doordarshan Kisan will soon launch 2 AI anchors named AI Krish and AI Bhumi. They can work like a human and can read news 24 hours in 365 days. They speak 50 national and international languages. Prehistoric artifacts made from fossil wood found in Gugwa National Fossils Park, indicating use of fossilized tree trunks as raw materials for tools by early men. The fossil park has plants in fossil form that existed in India between 40 million and 150 million years ago. Recently, scientists discovered that anti-nephrin autoantibodies serve as biomarker for monitoring advancement of nephrotic syndrome. Biomarkers are measures used to perform a clinical assessment such as blood pressure. AstroSat observations have helped discover irregular emission of high-energy X-ray photons from a black hole X-ray binary system. BHXRB system consists of a black hole and a companion star that are locked in gravitation. INS Kilton, one of Project 28 anti-submarine warfare corvettes, visited Brunei as part of operational deployment. P-28 was aimed at building 4 indigenous ASW corvettes. Recently, mass fish deaths were reported in the Periyar River. Periyar is a perennial and longest river in Kerala. It originates from the Sivagiri Hills of Western Ghats. Before we sign off, let's challenge your understanding in today's installment of Test Your Knowledge. We appreciate your company. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of News Today. For the solutions to the quiz and to access the PDF version, remember to visit the provided links in the description below.